Pleasure Principles, where we explore the real, raw, and radiant sides of human connection. Because pleasure is not just about the physical thing, it's all about emotional, relational, and deeply, deeply personal. Yeah. I'm your host, Avik, dear listeners, and today we are diving into a subject. Yes, subject that many couples quietly struggle with. It's how intimacy evolves when chronic illness enters the relationship. Yep. And my guest today, please welcome Lisa Gray. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, before we delve deep into the discussion, I'd quickly love to introduce you with Lisa. So, Lisa is a licensed marriage and family therapist who's spent the last 2 decades helping couples navigate conflict, rebuild the connection, and sustain love through life's toughest transitions. So, Lisa has a thriving private practice in the San Francisco Bay Area, and where she specializes in high conflict couples and the unique challenges like chronic illness can bring into relationships. So she knows this not just professionally but personally. After being diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome in 2009, she discovered the firsthand that how illness can shift intimacy, communication, and even identity when within a partnership. Yeah. And now she's on a mission to help couples expand their definition of intimacy beyond sex as uh, we have been taught to understand it, and also into something deeper, more creative, and more sustaining. So I'll not take much of your time. Lisa, welcome to the show. And I have a feeling that this conversation is going to speak a lot to, a lot of hearts, I'd say. So welcome to the show.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So, Lisa, as you have said, that the chronic illness doesn't just affect one person, it affects the entire relationship system. So, uh, when a diagnosis first enters the picture, right? So, uh, what kind of emotional and physical shifts do you typically see between the partners?
Uh, yeah, when we're talking about diagnosis, I think it
Mhm.
it depends on what kind of a chronic. That's the one time where it kind of depends on what kind of a chronic illness. Because if you're absolutely fine today and you fall off a ladder and you have a traumatic brain injury, that's a very shocking shift. Um, so you're gonna feel a little bit more like numbness and shock, that sort of thing. Whereas, if you have, say, late stage Lyme disease and it took you 9 or 10 years to get a diagnosis where you just didn't feel great for 9 or 10 years, then that's a bit of a longer process. And, when people don't know what's wrong with them, but they think something is wrong, but I don't know what it is, a lot of times their partners don't believe them because you can't really see a lot of the symptoms of many chronic illnesses. So in this case, when it comes to diagnosis, it kind of depends on how it comes about. But I paired that in my book, I talk about that as like the shock and denial phase of the grieving process of a chronic illness because it's like getting used to the idea that something has changed and you can no longer have your relationship be what it used to be, basically.
Yeah, exactly true. So, if I may ask, like, what are some of the early signs that couples are struggling to adapt, even if they are not saying it out loud?
Yeah, I think that, chronic illness is a grieving process, and both people are grieving the loss of a lifestyle, the loss of, dreams that they had.
Mm.
But as we know, when two people are grieving, it often looks really different. And so,
Yeah.
something that you might see is like the person who is chronically ill gets very wrapped up in trying to just the full-time job that managing your health can be, and the partner kinda takes a
Mhm.
back burner, and then the well partner feels, um, left out of that process often, or sometimes, like I said before, they just don't even believe that their partner is
Mhm.
not doing well, and so you start to see the disconnection in communication right away,
Mm,
as they're both having their own private experiences, but not necessarily talking to the other person about it.
exactly. Hmm. I mean, I'd say that's such a kind of important distinction. Like the idea that illness becomes part of the relationship ecosystem, um, not just one person's experience, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something that I see a lot is that the person with the chronic illness doesn't have a lot of empathy for their well partner. I mean,
Mhm.
they're thinking, "I'm the one who's sick. I'm the one who doesn't
Right.
feel good. You know, what's their problem?" But the person who's well is also grieving all of these changes and has their own emotional experience going on. Yeah.
Very truly said. Very truly said. Yeah. And um, uh, I mean, obviously, I mean, intimacy beyond the physical, like when illness changes, what's physically possible, like the pain, fatigue, medications, or fear of injury. Um, how can couples begin to reimagine intimacy in a way that still feels connected and alive? What do you have to say?
Yeah. I think that the most important thing is just to remember that sex and intimacy are 2 different things, and so I often have people when they're in my office, I often have couples think back to maybe someone they had a crush on in, grade school or, when they were real young before they ever had sex, like, the people that they had crushes on, that they kinda were boyfriend and girlfriend, and all of the creative, sensual things that they did um, before they even considered before they were on the path to sex. And many times people think of those relationships as the most like exciting and like sensual relationships that they've had. And it didn't even involve sex. But then once we get into these long-term relationships, sex is kind of the main event. So when people have chronic illness, I invite them to step back and remember that there are lots of ways to experience healing touch and lots of ways to be sensual that don't necessarily involve having sex. So, um, you have to get a little bit more creative and understand that this is about, like your show is named, this is about pleasure, it's about sensuality, it's about connection. And that doesn't have to look one way, but it does require some communication about it, which is sometimes hard for people.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. So, and how do you help the partners kind of separate sex from intimacy and begin to explore the pleasure through presence, curiosity, and I'd say communication instead of.
Yeah, I think, sometimes it does help to have a therapist sort of guiding the conversation about intimacy, but I ask
Mm,
them to basically sort of step back from like their traditional thinking about sex, and that's off the table, and sort of like start to experiment with what's it like just lying together on the bed? What's it like snuggling? What's it like to just
mm,
hold hands or make out or you know what I mean? Like things that maybe
mm,
they have forgotten to do that they used to do. And so, we experiment a little bit with what's possible for the person because if you're very fatigued, this may not be super adventurous, it might just be laying together and breathing together,
mm.
making eye contact, things like that. So really kind of stepping back and understanding that your commitment is to feeling connected to each other through some kind of touch or connection, but that doesn't necessarily have to be sex. It can be any type of
Yeah,
connection. So it's like slowing down, being creative in your thinking and talking about what the possibilities actually are.
true, true. I mean, it's definitely very, very important. I mean, it's such a liberating shift. I mean, pleasure not as a performance and but as a attunement, I would say.
Yes.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Mhm.
And
And many people have forgotten the attunement piece. I mean, over the years that everything has been fine and normal, many people have, they have sex and intimacy, but they've forgotten the attunement piece, the connective piece. And so it's for some people, ironically, it's even sort of a relief to step back and be like, actually, our focus is going to be on connecting with each other and attuning with each other. And whatever activity that is, that's it's fine. But the connection and attunement becomes the main event, not what you're doing. Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
Mhm.
And like you have lived this experience yourself. So um how does chronic illness impact a person's sense of identity, desire, and even I would say kind of worthiness in the relationship?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's really hard not to become identified with your diagnosis. For most of us, the amount of time that it takes to
Mm,
work on, whatever treatments we're doing and how we're
mm,
feeling and all that becomes sort of a central focus. And I feel like connection with your partner, initially at least, kinda takes a back seat, like, that we can do that later, right now I need to concentrate on what's going on with me, and that's true to some extent, but I'm always encouraging people to find balance, because if you're gonna build a life that has meaning to you, it's gonna have to have balance. It can't all be about the illness. That's not all you are. So I describe it sort of like if you look at the sky, the illness is clouds in the sky, but you're the sky. Like you are so much
mm.
more than just the illness that happens to be moving through. So yeah, it really has to be kind of a conscious decision to be balanced in that way.
So, I mean, uh, what helps couples kind of process that grief? I mean, the loss of what intimacy used to be, so that they can um, create something new together.
Yeah. So, in the book, I base what I tell couples on acceptance and commitment therapy.
Mhm.
And I'll just give you kind of a short snapshot of what acceptance and commitment therapy is, which is that you accept all of your feelings and your emotional experiences. So, we're not trying to push away any anger or frustration or any of that. We're accepting all of that, but then we're committing to certain ways of behaving. And the way that we behave is based on our values, not our feelings. So I think, what happens for couples early on is you get diagnosed with a chronic illness and there's just a lot of feelings, and people are reacting and responding based on these feelings.
Mm,
So they might be angry with each other or frustrated with each other or depressed or whatever it might be. And with acceptance and commitment therapy, what I'm teaching couples is we can accept all of those experiences. All of that is true, but we have to figure out, what do you want your life to mean? What are your values? At the end of the day, what do you want the meaning of your life to have been? And in that way, you can sort of step back from the illness and say, despite all of these feelings, despite all of these experiences, I have these certain values to make meaning out of my life. And I have to behave in these ways to do that. So it's a little bit of a mind shift. It's like a lot more intentional living than just kind of drifting through life like you can do when you're healthy. You have to be very intentional about, what is the meaning of my life? What do I want it to be about? And how do I have to behave to accomplish that?
uh, yes. Hmm. That's beautiful. I mean, communication is a
Mhm.
kind of intimacy all its own.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 And regarding the communication, when I say it, so like uh, you often emphasize that communication is the foundation of the connection, and when one partner is in pain or feels guilt about not being able to do enough, uh, what kinds of conversations can help rebuild trust and closeness? What do you say?
Yeah, I think that curiosity and, like, really learning how to listen to one another is your best bet, because I think that, if,
Mm,
for example, the sick person is feeling guilty about not being able to do as much, but the well partner might be feeling guilty about going out to play tennis or something that they used to do with their partner, but now they're doing with somebody else. And so they both have all of these feelings of guilt or shame. And if you don't communicate those, they just fester. They just turn into like resentments and all of that. And so the the way to address it, most couples, when they sit down to talk about something like this, they go straight to problem solving. They go straight to, what do we want to do about it? But I ask couples to slow down and just have really curious and open conversations. And so you're just, you're sitting down with the intention of just hearing how your partner's feeling without trying to solve it, without trying to make it different, without feeling like you have to do something about that, but just being a present, empathetic
Mm,
person for your partner to be able to say their experience to. There may be things you can do about that in terms of solving it. That comes later. But for the connection piece, you have to be willing to share hard things with your partner. And you're not going to do that if your partner's reaction is negative. So both people have to kind of be committed to just listening and hearing and validating their partner's experience. That is healing in itself before you actually even do anything about it, just to hear and witness. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly true. Yep. Ooh, I mean, lovely. It's really lovely. So, one more thing. I mean, for the couples who are listening right now, who feels kind of disconnected, maybe even afraid that their physical bond is gone for good.
Yeah.
So, where do they start? What do you suggest?
I suggest starting with like backing up and starting at the beginning. So it's like, again, you can table kind of the more advanced intimacy or the connection, you're not going to get from A to Z in one day. Start with just like making eye contact for 30 seconds. Start with kissing each other. John Gottman talks about the 6-second kiss, kiss each other for just a little bit longer than you did yesterday. Or if all of that is intimidating, just lie together. Sometimes I have my couples just lie together on the bed, fully clothed, just lie together. Don't talk, no talking. It's just about enjoying like the touch and the closeness of the other person. So sometimes even conversations too advanced, you have to just start with like, as human beings,
Mm,
what is the basic level of connection that we have? And from the moment we're born, that's touch. We need our mother to hold us when we're born because that touch is very healing. It's like a
mm,
necessary ingredient for human beings, and so even if you can only start there, even if you can just sit on the couch and hold hands, but like any effort you make towards connection is going to
yeah.
put you in the right direction.
Exactly. Exactly. Very well said. Yes. I love that because the idea that connection is something we can relearn that every stage of life, and
Mhm.
that love can adapt when we allow to it for sure. So, definitely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Great. So, Lisa, thank you so much for bringing such a depth and tenderness to this conversation. And I definitely say that you have shown us that intimacy doesn't disappear when uh, illness enters the room. It simply asks us to evolve. So, thank you so much for
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Amazing. And for everyone who's listening, if you or someone you love is navigating the chronic illness and intimacy, know this that your story is not broken. It's just unfolding differently. And in that difference, there can be beauty, creativity, and new kinds of pleasure. So, Lisa, if someone wants to connect with you, what will be the great medium to connect?
So I have a website for my books, which is lisagrayauthor.com. And then Lisa Gray MFT is my therapy website. And I'm on Instagram at Lisa Gray MFT as well.
Amazing. So, dear listeners, what I'll do is I'll put all the links into the show notes for your easy reference. And with this hope, this is your host Avik, and this is Pleasure Principles, reminding you that pleasure is not lost in pain. It's waiting to be rediscovered, one honest moment at a time. So until next time, be gentle with your body, open your heart, and curious about the many ways love can still touch you. So, thank you so much.